What is up, everybody, and welcome to The Well-Rounded Coach. I'm your host, Dylan King of Flambeau Fit. I've been a coach for nearly a decade now, and now I train people online and in person. Not only am I a proud trans man myself, but I've been a vocal advocate in sharing my personal story to help educate others, and I've been doing so since 2017. I am a true believer in manifesting the life of your dreams through visualization and meditation. Every other episode will be joined by my best friend Jimmy, who's an all-around amazing guy, super passionate about data, equity, and making sure people feel seen and are cared for. We're going to be diving in deep, all things fitness, family, and how to feel good about being you. Our goal for this podcast is to help as many people as possible live the life you know you deserve. So tune in and see how you can live your best life using the time, resources, and community you have. Let's go. All right, so I'm excited because this is our first episode. Everybody, welcome Jimmy husband.
Do a wave.
You can wave to the camera because we're going to have
That's
people
right.
listening and watching.
Hello, those in the ether.
We may have a little indecisiveness, so we couldn't decide whether we wanted to YouTube or just podcast, so we figured both. I want to be really transparent, and I'm super excited that anybody who's watching or listening just our first episode, I think that's super cool that we would have anybody that wants to listen to us, you know.
Outside of our partners.
Yeah, poor people. But why listen to us, right? Like, why trust us? Why our opinions matter or have any value to them? So what we're going to do for today is just dive into our life stories, where we come from, and why we think the way we do, why we feel the way we do about any topic necessarily that we'll talk about in our whole podcast series. So to jump it off, I want to hand it over to Jimmy and hear Jimmy's story from as young as you can remember. Just tell me about your life.
No pressure there, I think.
Yeah.
Just no pressure. First episode. I'll start. Man, my life. So I'm 32 now. From Louisiana my whole life. Grew up in Baton Rouge. Moved to New Orleans 15-ish years ago. Private school kid my whole life, which is
Totally different than me.
yeah, totally different from you.
Yeah, it was like, this is the neighborhood we live in. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, so we private Catholic school was really important to both of my parents. So that was like a big goal, and I went to one Baptist school for preschool, and that was it. And then so that kind of really like set the tone for a lot of things, like Catholicism and private school. Not just for like our values and stuff, but also like the social structures, like, you know, gender, right? Because that's what we're here to talk about too, is like our gender and our gender experience.
Which is like totally different than mine, because I didn't grow up with like religion in my household at all. And now coming to find out in adulthood, like my parents always believed in God apparently.
Yeah.
But like I specifically remember hearing my dad say something about praying to God or believing in God, and I was like, after high school for me, and I remember stopping and being like, you believe in God? And he was like, yeah. And I'm thinking, well, where the shit was this my whole life, you know? Like,
Right.
I've had like almost felt like no guidance in any sense, shape, you know, growing up. So it's just really funny because a lot of my closest friends grew up with religion. Like even Missy, not necessarily super practicing or anything like that, but I mean, she went to Catholic, you know, schools growing up, and then she even went to Christian colleges, you know, but it's just, you know, continue.
We'd do the thing, go to church on Sundays. I went to Vacation Bible School, so I know some of the little songs.
Really?
Yeah, like, oh man, I wonder if I can remember one. I can remember the like, Jesus loves the little children.
Yeah, yeah.
All the children of the world. That one.
I think I might have heard it somewhere in my life.
Pretty popular. So yeah, we went to private school. Private school and Catholic school particularly laid the foundation, and our religion laid the foundation for a lot of our values. Right, and, you know, I said that a few minutes ago, but, like, gender particularly Catholic school and private school is always a very gendered environment. So like,
Yeah.
that was it. I mean, it was very clear from.
And I mean, I'll be honest, I think gender, even in public schools, so not everywhere public schools, but public schools here have uniforms.
Yeah.
And then they have like the dress codes even at the dances and stuff. So like, even though I wasn't going to private school, you know, it was like, I was the chick that like never wore a skirt. So it was funny on like, say, Spirit Week when I decided to wear one of my friend's skirts. Like, it was a big ordeal.
Yeah.
You know, and like, we'll get into it, I'm sure, whether it's this episode or not, but like all through high school, I was allowed to wear pantsuits or pants in general to all of the dances. And then here comes my senior prom, and they have like a pep rally kind of meeting just for the seniors. And the principal was straight up like, if any girl shows up in a tux or any guy shows up in a dress, you're not going to be allowed in. You know, and it was like, I went through P-flag and everything, trying to be like, how can I go my whole high school career going to all of these dances just to participate in things with my friends, which we'll also get into later, was very few and far between that I really got to enjoy any kind of like that adolescent stuff. But, you know, my whole high school time, I've been allowed to participate and go with pantsuits or whatever. And then here's the biggest night of like a high schooler's life. It's prom night. And it's like, well, shit, I'm going to have to embarrass myself and feel totally ashamed and gross in a dress in order to even participate. You know, so it's like, even though it wasn't private, we have that dress code here.
Yeah, because there's like, I mean, and I feel like this sort of relates to the question that like every person sort of has is like, well, when did you know? And like, what did you do about it when you were young? And especially because like we're like old trans people now, which is like,
and that's so weird.
That's definitely gonna be a running joke. By the by, is like we're like old trans people.
It's so crazy now because I remember being like, well, you're just a baby, and I'm like, bing, and I'm like, here, you know?
Yeah, and so like it was also because of these social structures, right, of like uniforms, and I understand why they're there to help, you know, make decisions easier and also like kind of like make everybody equal, you know, but because they're making everybody equal, they're not letting
anybody
know.
Express their individuality. And then individuality in a way was like, ooh, well, that's weird. We're like, oh, that's wrong.
Yeah, and so it's like,
because if it's skewed too far from that dress code, then it was like,
yeah. And it was a way to make sure that, you know, you could focus on school or whatever. And I'm sure for some folks that really helps. It's one less decision for a family. It's one less decision for a person. But what it does too is it doesn't provide enough space for kids and adults to be able to express themselves or be a little bit different. Yeah. You know, and be more true to themselves. And it didn't teach us, and it didn't teach my family that there was like different language for it. So like a lot of people, they're like, when did you know that you were trans? And a lot of it is like, well, I didn't know until I was older because I didn't know that language.
There's no vocabulary. Yeah.
Like I didn't know that was a thing because
absolutely.
My life was like, okay, well, boys wear the blue pants and the white shirt to school, and I wear the plaid green.
I don't even know
skirt.
What it would have been like if I was made to wear a skirt. So like I knew super young. I was like 5 or 6, and I remember I always wanted to play Simba, you know, like when I'm playing pretend, like I wanted to be Simba or I wanted to be Aladdin. And I was super pissed when my mom made me be Jasmine for Halloween. But like that's like some of the youngest stuff I remember. You know, she's like, oh, there's not a Jasmine costume here. And I was like, I smell bullshit. You know, you're like 6 years old. You're like, there's no Aladdin costume in this whole Toys R Us. You know what I'm saying? And I remember walking down the street and like my aunt and my mom being like, look, Jasmine, there's your Aladdin. I remember just literally being really pissed off at like 6 years old. And then they forced me to wear mascara, and I was like, you know, it's like all getting in my eyes and stuff. They're like, it felt to me like they were gouging them out. And I remember thinking like I would have been a cuter Aladdin. And you know, like we're in elementary school at this point, but still, it wasn't a distinct like, oh, I feel like I'm a boy. It was like I'm just feeling my feelings, right? Like I wanted to be Aladdin. I want to pretend like I'm Simba, not Nala. Like I wanted the creepy crawly, like gum it was like a gummy bear. It was like gummy worms and gummy roaches machine.
Yeah.
And talk about livid when I got like the Easy Bake Oven. You know, and there's no moment where you're like, I feel like a boy, because that vocabulary is, if it's not introduced to you, you're just trying to live your life. But I do remember going swimming with my cousins and being put in like 2 pieces and being very uncomfortable, feeling embarrassed, not understanding why I'm embarrassed, you know, and then always being grouped with the girls. Yeah. So like growing up in my family, it wasn't necessarily I noticed differences because of school uniforms, but my uncles had a kung fu school until we lost it in Katrina, and all of my boy cousins went into martial arts, and then all the girls were put into a local like dance studio. Well, they put me in the dance studio, and I hated it. I hated every second of it. I begged and cried to go to kung fu with my boy cousins and where my uncle taught. And I mean, I think I must have been maybe first, second grade, and my uncle had me in his office, and he was like, "Look, I don't teach kids." Because I was like one of the youngest of the cousins. He's like, I don't teach kids, but if you really want to do this, you can't cry. And when we spar, you have to spar whoever I tell you to. And I was like, yes, sir. You know, I just like whatever it took to be grouped with the boy cousins I had was all I wanted.
Yeah.
You know,
clothing was like, my mom got to a point, and she'll still say this, she got to a point where she's like, I got tired of fighting you on what you wanted to wear, and to her, it really didn't bother her. I think she was worried that if she didn't put me in like, you know, pink or flowers and stuff, that people wouldn't read me as a boy, or people wouldn't read me as a girl, excuse me.
Right.
And then they would have their feelings about it to her and to me. Mm-hmm. So I think part of it is she didn't want me to be embarrassed because like people would misgender me.
Gotcha.
And it happened when I was younger. It happened. I still very clearly remember like being outside of her office at work, and I had like some blue striped shirt on and some like black shorts, and somebody told her, they were like, "Oh, your son's really cute," or whatever compliment they said, and it really
hit her.
It really threw her off because I think she didn't know how to respond, and I think she was also worried that I was upset. Yeah. So I do think there was a decent amount of like, well, I don't want people to be hurtful to you because like I just don't want that for you. Yeah. You know, and I think because the language wasn't there for her or for me or my, you know, the rest of my family.
Yeah, and I'll say that too. So growing up for me was rough. I was really, from the beginning, as long as I can remember, I knew that however I was acting was wrong. They're like, why are you acting this way? In a sense, I was punished many a times. And I'll give my parents credit to, they got pregnant with me at 17. They dropped out of high school. You know, they're thinking they're about to live their best life, and boom, like, hey, they're having a kid, you know. Yeah. And it was 88. Well, 88. So, and you know, at this time, anybody that got pregnant, like, everybody just kind of like got married because like that was what they were supposed to do. So they were totally toxic for each other. So they're shoved in this toxic relationship. They're super young, and there's no resources in the early 90s in the South of, oh shit, what do we do? Our kid's different than other kids, you know, gender wise, you know, you just, so I had a lot of, I was punished, man. I remember just like being in a room with my parents and hearing, well, I didn't see a dick in the delivery room, you know, I didn't have a little boy, you know, and I heard these things. Yeah. And I didn't really understand what was going on, but I could definitely feel the vibe. So I knew that some way I was acting was incorrect. It was not expected. And, you know, it was hard for me. So it was like, I want to say I felt super uncomfortable and insecure in my body by the time I was in 3rd grade. Because all I'm hearing at home is like, why are you acting this way? You know, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not a boy. I didn't have a boy. All this stuff, you know, so it was like for different reasons, like your mom didn't want like the outside world to destruct you, and it was like kind of my parents were like, what the hell are we going to do with a kid like this? Yeah. And I felt it every single day.
Yeah.
And that created a lot of anxiety for me that I feel like within the past recent years, I've done a lot to overcome my anxiety. And I think Missy will attest to that. But a lot of anxiety of, am I acting right? Am I doing okay? Like, is everybody okay with me? Like being around me? Like, am I making anybody uncomfortable? Because I was uncomfortable and felt like I was making people uncomfortable in my own home for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Because they would almost even take turns fighting over how I was being. And again, I had no idea what was going on. You're just a kid. You're just trying to wear clothes that's comfortable to you, play things that make you happy,
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's also like we would have. I was like allowed to wear whatever I wanted, pretty much, and like pick it out. But there were like certain
times,
certain events that was like that the line was drawn, and I knew
like not here, not here, Jimmy.
Yeah. So like let's see. If I'm reaching back into my Catholic brain knowledge, I have at least 3 or 4 of the 7 sacraments or something like that.
I don't even know what you're talking about right now. But
so sacraments, well, real quick, because it's not related a lot. Sacraments are like important events that are like they're like religious milestones.
Okay,
right? So like they're like leveling up in the Catholic Church.
Okay, like when the little kids go to communion and all that stuff.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I had to wear a dress for communion. That was like. I don't even think there was a discussion. I think it was like that was what I knew I had to do. And I think like when we talk about, I think a lot of people are really stressed. They're like, how do kids know? Or like, what if they don't know at 5? And what if they regret it? Or what if they regret it at 9? And it's like, kids are smart. You have kids, and I know they're smart.
Yeah.
And
I just can't believe how much they actually understand at 5 and 3.
Right.
And
kids
like, freaking know.
I think like if you let your kid, and this will be a much longer discussion I think later of like how parents navigate that fear, of like in general how to protect your kids and how to make sure the world doesn't hurt them and how to make sure that they're loved and they know all those things when they go out in the world. But like I think I knew, even though I didn't have the language, I know that I knew. Because of that vibe. I was like, okay, well, the vibe is I'm not a boy, so, like, therefore I have to be a girl.
Yeah.
But, like, that vibe of me being a girl and doing these societally girl things didn't fit. So I just, like,
did you feel super anxious? Because I always felt super anxious.
I was always, like, a weird kid. So, like...
Yeah. I was always, like, the tomboy, but it was always more than that, Like, I remember friends telling me in middle school and be like, you'd be so cute if you were a boy. And I'd be like, I fucking know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it was almost like everyone caught the vibe, even though no one in our society in the South, like maybe if you're like in California or like New York, like maybe there was conversations at this point to certain people. But for us, like, there was no discussion. It was just like, and I remember people asking me like, would you ever want to be a boy? And literally I would say no, because it's impossible. So why am I going to waste that energy thinking about it?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if I could change the world, I was like, but it's impossible. But I tell you what, I specifically remember more than one night, multiple times, and this goes into manifest. I remember laying in bed, my parents being like, well, you go to sleep already? I guess they could hear me like rustling around or whatever.
Right.
They're like, go to sleep. And I'm sitting there in bed just being like, God, please let me wake up and be a boy. Please just let me wake up and be a boy. I'm going to wake up and be a boy. And it was like, right, even though I didn't know anything about like religion and stuff, my mom is still very religious. So I guess I knew like a prayer through her, because like I'd spend a ton of time over there and she'd make me pray every night before bed, even though I had no idea like who we're praying to or whatever. I knew this concept. And so I remember going to sleep so many nights being like, please let me wake up a boy. And I look at it now and I'm like, man, did I manifest the possibility of hormone therapy for myself? Like,
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of crazy the way I live now,
Yeah.
manifesting everything I feel like in my life and being like, was I doing that shit back then?
Right. Look, I know your manifesting powers are powerful, so I can't say no. It's hard
Yeah,
not
I don't
to
know.
say no.
I mean, the science was probably already developing or developed in some sort of black market out there, but boom, here we are, and we legally get it
Right.
prescribed through our doctors.
Well, and they've been doing it for at least since the late 50s. They had been there were a few doctors that were looking into it, and like that, the pathologization of and medicalization of like transitioning is a totally a separate topic.
Yeah, and we can get into that later too, because we will get into on this episode getting our first prescriptions and how different that was for us. Because another thing I think is interesting about our friendship for everybody is, I think from the outside we're seemingly super similar.
Yeah.
We're like two passing, seemingly cisgender white dudes, right? Like, I'm half Spanish, but no one really ever gives me credit for being half Spanish.
Yeah.
So it's like I just look very like privileged. We both look very privileged in the world now. But our upbringings and our experiences starting our medical transition were like super different.
Yeah.
How was going into like middle school? Because I know middle school for me was kind of a time I knew at least I was way more attracted to girls. Well, I was only attracted to girls.
Yeah.
So like that was kind of the age for me where I was like, shit, I'm crushing on my best friend. Was that kind of a time for you, or were you still kind of just like in a confused days of like adolescence?
I was still leaning like real hard into I'm a girl. That is what I'm supposed to do. It'll just eventually it'll feel.
I'm not saying it have like little bearded boyfriends here and there, like through elementary and middle school, but I definitely had stronger attractions to like my best friends, through middle school, and I was like, I can't do this because they're not going to be my friend anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
and like
which
also,
even just made me even more awkward than I already was.
It's like, because we didn't talk about gender and because we didn't talk about that stuff and sexual education stuff, because of the way that it's like set up in not just Catholic schools but in a lot of schools in general, is like you just don't talk about it until like the magic age of like 13 or 14, and it'll vary from place to place based on like what they're allowed to teach and when.
Yeah.
So like I just kept doing this thing where I was like, okay, well I'll just keep playing this part, and I think one day it'll feel good, and because it was like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. A lot of it was not, oh, I have the option to be a different person. A lot of it was like, this is who I'm supposed to be, because like that's what society tells me that I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna try it, and eventually I'll figure it out, and eventually it'll feel good.
Yeah.
And then like I said a few minutes ago, is like both my parents were like really supportive. My dad, was like, you want to be a tomboy, that's totally fine. I'll teach you how to fish. I'll teach you how to hunt. I'll teach you all of those things. Which also, like, to the South's credit though, hunting has never been a sport. I say the word sport. It might have some feelings to people, but hunting has never been an activity that I've ever seen girls really excluded from.
Yeah, here. Right. Like, it's just kind of part of life around here for anybody's kids, regardless of their gender. So that's not necessarily a boy thing either.
It's
here,
like
here.
Yeah. Pros and cons to that, but a lot of middle school and even into high school was like, this is the part I'm going to play because that's the part I'm supposed to play. And you
had your parents' support like pretty much the whole time to just kind of like figure yourself out. Yeah. And they were just taking you as the tomboy.
Yeah. So like when, I did we didn't really have a lot of like, they didn't really do middle school dances. They had like one, like maybe when I was
hitting up them sock cops over here in public school.
See, we didn't do any of that unless
they had dances too, but I was also hitting up the sock cops, but I was always just waiting on the bleachers for my cousins to finish dancing, because like I was like in jeans and Timberlands and like sitting on the bleachers because at the time, right, like, I was blatantly a lesbian sitting on the bleachers because I didn't want to dance with any of the dudes, but also none of the girls were going to dance with me at that time either. You know, we're looking into like mid 90s. No, I was in 6th grade in Millennium in the 2000s. So early 2000s then.
Yeah.
You know, there was definitely slim picking for middle school other lesbians. But I didn't really like have support in that way. Like, I remember my family being okay with me being like the tomboy, and my cousins always kind of like picking on me for being a tomboy, and like everyone just kind of accepted it. But like at home, I just never felt really supported in being myself. You know, I could definitely tell they wanted, I think they were super proud I was really into music and like really into instruments and stuff, but man, they had their own problems going on. Like, your parents were still married at that point. So my parents, I mean, I want to say they were divorced before I was even 1. Like I said, they got pregnant with me at 17. They dropped out. You know, I was pretty much made to feel my own whole entire life because they verbally told me more than once, like, you know, I dropped out because of you. I could have done something with my life, but then we got pregnant with you. Like, we had friends before you, you know, so like, I grew up just feeling really unwanted. I was unwanted because of the way I was. I was unwanted because, like, obviously they were young and just wanted to live their life. So I just never really felt like home was, like, my safe space. Yeah. You know, I was always begging my mom, like, can you just adopt me? You know? And she's like, Mija, I cannot adopt you, you know? Yeah. So, but, like, and, like, my dad moved away to Texas a handful of times, and then even more times he would just leave, you know, even if he was living locally, you know, and I never knew when he was leaving. I never knew when he was coming back, which added to the stress on my mom, you know, and it was a lot like, well, we wouldn't be in this situation like if your dad loved you, you know, and like that was so hard on top of a happy kid going through gender identity and sexual orientation and just middle school. Yeah. You know, so then I had all of this on top of it of just feeling like a total burden my entire life, which like super amplified depression. I think I was first prescribed antidepressants when I was in 7th grade. It was like Zoloft and Lexapro, you know, and I remember my parents just being like, why are you so destructive? And I was like, because I'm fucking unhappy. Like, what else should I be happy about, you know? Yeah. Like, music was totally my escape. I mean, I was writing songs in middle school, and, like, that was just, like, really, you know? So it's interesting to me because I feel like me and you have ended up in similar places in our lives. Like, we're different people, obviously, but I think where we're at mentally now is very similar, even though, like, every single thing about our upbringing and our emotional stability, home life, like schooling, like everything literally up until this point has been so different for us.
Yeah. See, my parents, I think the goal was to keep them in school, keep them in private school. And then once they get done with private school and they hit 18, so I'm the youngest, right? Which is also like relevant.
And I'm the oldest.
Once the youngest is done and is 18.
You're youngest of 3?
Youngest
I'm
of 3.
oldest of 3.
and they're like, okay, we just got to get through that, and then we can figure it out. You know, and figure it out means like part ways, do the legal stuff, or figure it out. I think they did try to give it another shot. I'm not 100% sure, but the ship was Catholic school and religion that will set you free to like you know, college and all of those other things. So like that was the goal. That was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be a girl, and like that's what I did. So I was just like, you know, a weird girl.
Did you come out in high school, or did you come out after high school?
I came out after high school.
Okay.
So
what's
interesting too is I went to an all girls school.
Yeah.
Which is like,
I think that's the main reason I'm thankful for going to public school is like I don't have to lie about where I went to high school, nor do I have to explain anything to anybody. I'm just like Grace King.
Yeah. Yeah. Here in the South, and it always throws my partner for a loop. She's always like, why do people obsess over where you went to high school so much in this
Because
city.
everybody here knows everybody. We're just 3 degrees away from every single person in the grocery store with us. Like, literally.
It's like, where'd you go to high school and what do you do for work?
Oh, where'd your parents go? Like,
yeah.
Like, I know them.
Right. So,
the smallest big city there ever was.
It's actually very small. Yes, it's very small. Mm-hmm. So I went to an all-girls high school. It's where my sister went. So it's legacy, you know. And a lot of people are like, I could never do that. That sounds awful.
Do what?
Like, go to an all-gender school. A lot of people are like really afraid of it for some reason.
Me and all my cousins, we all went to public school, so I don't even think I knew anybody growing up that went to all girls. I don't think it was until high school that I realized that there was like Chappelle, which is the all girls school close to here.
Yeah.
But like, everyone I knew went to public. Like, that's the neighborhood I grew up. Everyone went into public. All my cousins went into public. Like, that's just... I didn't really even know any different.
Yeah. Well, and like, we didn't do public school because like, my mom was like, has her own stuff with it, you know, probably like she's really invested
I know we wouldn't have been able to afford it like anyway, but I don't even know if I wouldn't even say that private school or religious schools were important because like I said, religion, everything I knew about religion growing up was because when I slept over at Momo's on Saturday, I knew she was taking me to Sunday school. You know, but I remember being like a kid and being in Sunday school, and there was like a cartoon picture of white Jesus on the wall, and I remember the Sunday school teacher being like, everybody, who's this? And everybody was like right there like, that's Jesus. I remember sitting there being like, how do all these kids know who this man is?
Yeah.
Like, I had zero clue. But like, Momo had like a picture of Jesus, and like I said, when I'd sleep over, like, you know, we would pray at night, but like I didn't have really any concept beyond that of what any of it meant.
Yeah, it was, and so high school is also a religious school, keeping on theme, right? You know, like religious private school. And I think my mom, you know, really values religion, which is totally fine. I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not necessarily an organized religious person.
I'm super spiritual. You know, I'm wooey.
I know
I just,
you got the crystals.
I don't need to know all the answers. I don't need to know who's in charge up there or what's in charge up there. I just have to know that I'm at peace. And if I stay connected, my life's going to work out just fine.
Right.
But, and, you know, everyone laughs at my crystals and my rocks, and that's fine.
It's, so, like, that was her thing. It's like, and to my dad's, he liked it too, but I think my mom was definitely more invested and still is more invested and finds joy in it, which is totally fine. I'm here for that. So that's where I went. I went to the all girls private high school, and I actually still to this day really am grateful for that experience because it gave me the opportunity to see that, like, okay, I can be whoever I want to be. Mm-hmm. Especially like emotionally and finding my voice and things like that. I really gave me that space because everybody else next to me was also, I think, figuring that out. You know, because like a lot of the societal things I think is part of it is, you know, like girls are taught to, you know, be more reserved. Boys are taught to speak up more. So I think a lot of that really shakes out in a gendered like school for girls if the class that you're with is also really great and supportive. So we had a really good class that year. I'm Facebook friends with a lot of them still. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are really like invested in each other's success. A lot of them are small business owners, and they're also invested in my joy and happiness. Like I've had so many of my classmates from whatever it is now, 14, 15 years ago, be like, I'm really happy for you. Yeah. And I'm really proud of you. Yeah. And, you know, all of these things. And I think on the token that it works for girls and finding their own voices and finding their own sense of selves, I think, and I didn't go to the school down the street, but I think the school down the street, it almost could be a detriment to the boys because they're not learning how to make themselves adjust to women, how to not
yeah.
take up as much space,
Right.
You know, how to
let the women speak,
yeah. How to be respectful. Those things I'm not sure being taught down the road.
It's so funny because you have like all these massive ideas of like what the school was shaping the kids into, and in public school I think we were all just fucking trying to just like survive.
Yeah.
You know, like in public school, like that's definitely the vibe. Like of all of my friends, you know, even my friends that like weren't queer at all, like everyone was just kind of like in these family situations where like we're in school because we're supposed to go to school, you know, and that was basically everybody I knew. High school for me was not at all really it didn't feel like a learning experience to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was a kid, like I never really even remembered when a test would happen, but I was smart enough to be able to pass like with B's and C's without remembering we had a test to study for or anything like that. But it was genuinely like just a survival mode and trying to figure out who am I, who are my friends, who can I trust, like what am I going to do with myself type of thing. I mean, I was like self-harming later in middle school, which is 7th, 8th grade, and then by high school, like I was already taking like pills on my way to school. Like I literally was buying pills already, taking them on my way to school just to like numb out the day or whatever and just get through it, you know. It's weird because I wouldn't say I was pretty popular for being such an outcast, and it was a very strange thing. So like I could talk to anybody in school, any circle, but I was like clearly the lesbian in school. There was days where people that were in the popular group that I rode the bus with and I thought we were friends, like literally made fun of me and ganged up on making fun of me with others like from across the courtyard. So I had those days, you know, like one specific thing I really remember, it was like in the fucking movies. There was I had a girlfriend. She was quote unquote, she was like my best friend, right? And we had a notebook and we'd write notes and we'd hand the notebook back and forth whenever we passed each other in the hallway. Well, there was this group of friends that was our really group of friends from our neighborhood. They were all in our bus stop. And we all, I mean, I think they all could kind of sense what was going on, but no one ever like called us out on it or whatever. There was always whispers here and there. I mean, that's just kind of like how it is in high school, no matter any relationship, I think straight or gay, but especially if it's a gay relationship. And I will never forget, someone stole our notebook. We couldn't find it. And we were like sweating, right? Yeah. We were like, fuck, where's this notebook? You know, that like people are going to know. And I remember one of the friends that we rode the bus together that was in this group of friends I was speaking about. She was like, yeah, man, that's crazy, because what happened is somebody took the notebook and made copies of our letters, and it was a pep rally day. So we had shortened classes in like the last hour or whatever of school. Everybody was going into the gym for the pep rally for whatever, and people spread the notes all around school. Like almost everybody in our class had the notes. So like we're in the hallway and people are like really teasing us hard, you know.
Kids are wonderful, aren't they?
Oh my God. And I remember, right, so you think I'm already someone who's self-harming.
Yeah.
I have no support at home. I know I'm different. I know I'm weird. I'm just trying to figure it out. Like I can't stand myself. I want to just crawl out of my body every single day. And now here's a group of friends that I feel like I can trust. And I'm venting to one of them about like how nervous I am about all this. And come to find out, it was that motherfucker that found our book and made the copies.
Yeah.
I whooped her ass at the bus stop. But it was crazy because what happened is I remember finding out. We didn't go to the pep rally. I went to like one of my teachers. I had like a lesbian teacher, and she was kind of like my safe haven at school. And I went to her classroom for the pep rally, and I found out it was that girl. And I remember the girl being in the hallway. It's like, it's all right. I'm going to whip that dyke's ass after school. And I remember I grew up doing martial arts now. So I remember being like, that's crazy, because this morning, this was my friend.
Yeah.
And now she's done all this, and the whole school's laughing at us and being teased, whatever. And I remember I got off at the bus stop before her. So my bus stop came, and I kept my ass in my seat. And everybody, like, slow motion turned, and they're like, oh, shit, she's staying on the bus. You know, and I was like, yeah, that's right, because I'm getting off at her bus stop because she said she was going to whoop my ass at the bus stop, so I'm ready, right? Like, I'm livid.
Yeah.
Because this was a group of friends I trusted, you know, and I already pretty much despised my life, and I was in survival mode anyway. And, like, my parents argued all the time, so violence was, like, not new to me. It was kind of like, hey, you got something to say? We're going to fight it out.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of the main form
This
of
is the way that we'll
communication.
solve
This
it.
is it, right?
Yeah.
I remember getting off at the bus stop, and this was somebody who didn't live in district, so her mom would drop her off at the bus stop and pick her up from the bus stop so she could go to the better public school, right? So we get off the bus, and she's walking away, and everybody's like, oh, you just gonna walk away like that? I'm like, yeah, I got off this bus stop for you. And her mom was like, she walked up to her mom, she must have told her mom what was going on, and her mom looked at me, and she was like leaning up against this old like pickup truck, and she was like, go beat that dyke's ass. I'll wait right here. And I whooped that girl's ass in front of her mama until somebody picked me up from my belt loops and my collar and pulled me back. Now, am I proud to be that kid? You know what? Maybe I am. Maybe I am proud to be that kid, right? Like, I don't want my kids to have to, like, fight their way through social situations, but, man, you got to defend yourself, you know? And violence was in fighting. Like, I mean, shoot, I was fist fighting till I was early 20s. It was just, like, fighting was always in my household. I fought with my mom. I fought with my dad. My parents fought with each other. Yeah. You know, so to me, it didn't feel like not normal.
Yeah.
But, like, that was, like, high school for me. It was like I had these moments that were really, really terrible, but then again, like, I could go hang out with the popular kids. I could go sit at the jock table, and then maybe one day they would tease me, you know? It was just really, and like I said, like, I was already buying pills at school, taking pills at school. You know, I actually ended up, I wanted to drop out because I came out in high school. So my mom kind of started noticing that my best friend was more than my best friend.
Yeah.
But there was not, like, a calm conversation about it. Like, I remember specifically I went to buy the Young and Hopeless CD from Good Charlotte at Best Buy. And when I got back home, all of my notes between me and my girlfriend were spread along my bed.
Yeah.
I remember walking into my room. Oh, my God. I could feel it now. Like, my heart sunk in to my stomach, you know? And my mom was like, do you want to explain any of this? And I just slammed my door, and I just stayed in there, and I got punished, you know? And it was always stuff like that. Like, I'd walk into the bathroom to brush my teeth in the morning, and there would be, like, a letter she found between me and my girlfriend, like Scotch tape up to the mirror. Yeah. So, like, I would start my day with anxiety, you know?
Yeah.
So, man, had just a lot of lack of support and super anxiety. Yeah. You know, and, like, I can't believe how calm of a person I feel like I am now because of how much of that, like, post-traumatic stuff that, like, I kind of emotionally had to work through. So I ended up coming out right after Katrina, finally just being like, you know what, I am gay, like, whatever. Yeah. And that's when I started getting kicked out. It was just kind of like whenever. I mean, sometimes I was one of the older ones, so when I was in high school, I could actually go get, like, a hotel room. I'd gotten a hotel room a couple of times, or I would go to my cousin's house, my cousin Ashley, and I would sleep over her house, and I had, like, a little Puggles, like a pug beagle mix. You know, just, like, pack up me and my dog and, like, you know, go sleep elsewhere and then come back home. And finally, I was like, I'm not coming back. Like, I'm tired of not knowing where I'm sleeping or, like, how I'm eating or fighting. I'm tired of fighting, you know? So I actually got into the early release program when I was a junior. So I would go to school from 7 to 11, and then I would go to work from 1 to 9. And I was only off, I think I was off Wednesdays and every other Sunday. And, like, that was my junior and senior year. Yeah. So I missed out on some of, like, the ceremonies and stuff because it was, like, towards the end of the school day. But at that time, like, I was already clocked in at work, you know? So I'm bummed that I missed out on some of that stuff. But again, like, that built my character. Yeah. Like, that built my work ethic. Like, survival. I'm always going to survive. Like, I'm going to last through anything, because if I could make it then with no resources, no support, and barely any income, like, I can always make it work, you know? I actually had my dropout papers signed, ready to go. My parents were like A-okay with me dropping out. And I decided to stay in school because I was like, you know what? My parents dropped out. And if I drop out, then that probably means both of my sisters are going to drop out. And I want more options for them.
Yeah.
So even though I had my dropout papers ready to go, I stuck it through because I just wanted to show them, like, we could fucking do this.
Yeah.
You know? So I did. But I did miss out on a lot of, like, all that really fun stuff. You know? And then I had $700 worth of bills before I was out of high school because... So my parents, they were split up back and forth. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times, like, they just totally, like, would on and off. But they got remarried my junior year. Me and my girlfriend at the time were their freaking witnesses. Wait. So they're like, we're going to go get each other's names tattooed on each other. And I remember looking at my dad and being like, why? Because y'all are going to regret it when y'all freaking get divorced again. And I got punished. And they, like, could not believe that I was, like, not having more faith in their relationship. And I was like, well, I mean, shit, y'all done split up like 25 times. What makes y'all think this is the winning bout? And I'll never get those punished 2 weeks back of my life. And I was right, because a year or so after I got out of high school, they got divorced from each other for the second time. But I bet you they're grateful that they don't have each other's names tattooed on them now.
Wait, so
do you think I gotta thank you?
They didn't do it?
They did not do it. I got punished, but they did not do it. They got divorced when I was in hair school, and I never got my 2 weeks back or a thank you.
Man, I'm glad that they didn't, but I'm also like...
Me too.
Oof, that's rough. Well, like...
Yeah.
I fared out okay because I tried to do the thing that I think a lot of... like queer and LGBT people our age did, which is like, if I can assimilate hard enough and just like fit in, it's gonna feel comfortable one day. And I know there are still kids doing that today. I know there are still adults who are way older than us still doing that today.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, so
definitely
like,
people come out later in life. Like, I see it all the time.
Yeah, and that's not like, I'm not here to like shame anybody's time when they come out or when they don't come out or whatever choices they make. And that's something I always tell people who are transitioning, who are coming out, whatever way you do it, whatever time you do it, however you do it, like, that's yours to do, and that's your journey.
When you're ready. When you feel like you have the support system, whether with others or within yourself.
Yeah, so like,
that's your time.
I'm just here to say this is how I did it. That doesn't mean that that's what you have to do, but I think, so, like, I did all right by this assimilation tactic, you know, and trying to fit in, but I know that people knew if there was somebody that might have been gay or at high school. Like,
and that's how high school was. I was like dating the only other lesbian. Well, there was one other friend of mine that was gay, and then there was one gay guy. But you think my high school, like my graduating class had like 300 something kids. So our high school had like 2,000 kids in it, and there was like 4 or 5 of us that I knew.
Yeah.
You know?
And like the other thing too is because the reason why assimilation, I think, happens so much in especially in Catholic schools is they're written into the rules.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I remember people, like, kind of getting punished or kicked out of Catholic schools. Not, like I said, I didn't really know anybody in it, but, like, after high school when I became a drag king and I started knowing all these other queer people through doing drag, I would hear their stories about getting kicked out or at least suspended and stuff for acting or getting caught in some sort of way.
Yeah, and like there were schools wouldn't, even the teachers, I mean, this is years ago, even way before the stuff in Florida and the don't say gay and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You know, it was like, even the teachers wouldn't talk about their lives. If they were talking about their lives and they were a man, then, or like they were with a man, then like, okay, you knew they were straight. If they didn't talk about their husband,
you kind of knew.
We didn't
or
ask.
Assumed.
We just knew better than to ask, you know? And none of us were nosy. It's not like we wanted to know necessarily, but I think it was like, okay, it was just one of those things that was like, if they don't talk about that they're with a man, then we're not going to ask because we shouldn't ask because what would happen, you know? Because like there was a rule, so you could stay in school if you were pregnant if you could fit in the uniform. As soon as you couldn't fit in the uniform,
you were out.
It might have changed. I'm not sure. I wouldn't bet the farm on it. But, you know, those are the kinds of things that when I hear people who are like spending money on education, whether it's private or whether they're paying taxes for education, via the public school system or however that education gets paid for, I'm like, these are things that are part of our education system that needs to be talked about. People need to, like, I wasn't taught consent, and I wasn't taught like how to give my consent to other people and what to do if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a great environment to do it because there's all of these, there's no gender there, there's no pressure from this gender binary of boys being there. So how do we talk about it with the boys and the girls, So like, I tried to assimilate, but I have to recognize that not everybody that went there had a like amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, I'm sure a few folks didn't feel good and didn't fit in and either left or just muscled their way through it and probably like didn't feel good when they went home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I went to prom. There are some pictures somewhere that probably need to be
burned
or thrown away. Whatever
I think I threw away all of mine until the party bus.
I
like went to say I went and then went and took the dress off and I was like, I'll just meet y'all at the party bus later. And I had like an Atreyu shirt, like a Screamo Band shirt on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I thought that I was like gay. I thought it might be, and I knew folks who were in school who didn't tell anybody, and I think other people knew.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember a person teaching me about I think it's like the International or National Day of Silence, where you don't talk all day, and because she sat behind me in religion class, because I had to do religion class, and she told me what it is, and she was like, yeah, it's a way to recognize like homophobia and queerphobia that exists. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And none of the teachers gave her shit for it. Like they just
let her do it.
They let her do it. And I actually forgot about that until this moment. And I was like, and even in religion class, like the teacher didn't like bother her, didn't do anything like that. So like there were moments of like sort of like hope, but overall the system was just, and in a lot of schools, especially private schools, is still not set up for those who are different.
Yeah.
Some of them are, most of them are not. And so I just didn't come out because I didn't know if that was something I could do.
Yeah.
Because I was still trying to assimilate, you know? So I went to college because that's what you do in the family. And then I came to New Orleans and I saw one of those LGBT tables. I think it was called like, I can't remember what it was called, but I went to, say hi, and the person behind the desk was like, oh, what's up, sir, or something. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I was like, actually, I'm a man, but I really, I'm not upset. I appreciate it or whatever. And that was really one of the...
You're like, why do I feel appreciative of that?
Yeah, it was like one of the first few times where I was like, this is not terrible. Like it did not give me a feeling that I thought that it would, which is like terrible and awful. So I did very well my first and second semester, started dating someone, did very poorly the rest of those semesters.
Male or female? You started dating?
I was dating a cis female. Mm-hmm. I was still presenting as female. I was 20-ish at the time. And then I think like either the Christmas of freshman year or the Christmas of sophomore year. I think it was freshman year. The Christmas of freshman year, I was like, I called my dad on the spillway. And I was like, hey, I'm coming home for Christmas. And he's like, great. I can't wait to see you. And I was like, I'm going to bring this girl. And he's like, okay, great.
Do you think he knew, like, girlfriend? Or do you think he was just thought, like, girl, that's a friend?
So I think I was like, she's coming as my girlfriend,
Okay, so you were clear on, like, what's up.
Yeah, so I was clear with him. And he was like, okay, not a big deal. And I actually forgot about this, too, is when I was younger, I played a few sports, not very well, but I played on... rec softball league. I was like 11 or 12. So that is the extent of my softball career until recently, right?
Yeah.
And he was in the car one day and he talked to me. He's like, hey, look, I want to check in. A lot of people think that girls who play softball, are like lesbians and they're gay and they can be really mean, So I just want to make sure that if you still want to play, like playing softball doesn't make you a lesbian and it doesn't make you this thing. Like whatever the relationship my dad had with my mom was the feelings relationship was very different. And the feelings that he gave to us and the attention that he gave to how we were feeling was like really, really there. He would always like try and check in with us. And he would be like, hey, if this is how you're feeling, what can I do to help you with that? And so that was like a really big formative thing for me too, where I was like, oh, well, I told him, I was like, oh, I'm not gay, it's fine, but I'll keep playing, and I'm like, for him to acknowledge that, to be like, hey, if this is bothering you, then like you can still play and you can still, you don't have to be gay. It's not a gay thing.
Yeah.
So I think he was always not, I don't think they knew or whatever, even though there were plenty of signs, but I think he was like, okay, like, that's fine. Like,
It's so funny. So like my parents were like, it's kind of ended up being ass backwards because growing up, my mom was always for LGBT rights. She would always be like, well, because people, like I remember watching when Massachusetts made, like MTV aired when Massachusetts made it legal and everybody got married like in front of the Capitol, I think. And my mom was explaining to me that like some people didn't want gay people to get married, but you love who you love. And then I remember my dad's from like Texarkana, Texas, like really, really small North Texas. So I remember when his parents, my grandparents came in, we all went to the quarter, and my mom didn't come with us. It was just me, my dad, and my grandparents, his parents. And we were driving, and I was like, yeah, and that's St. Anne where all the fags live. So I went home, and I was like, Mama, what's a fag? And she was like, where did you hear that? And they got in a massive fight that night. And she was like, what if one of your kids turns out gay? But then me being gay was only a problem for my mom. My dad was like, okay, I got you footballs and remote control cars because like that's what you wanted. Whatever. I think he was happier that he didn't have to worry about guys. I think he was like, Dad was relieved in a sense. And then, my mom, I specifically remember her saying one time, she's like, I'd rather have a slut than a dyke for a daughter. And then that was another thing in high school, like, a memory. And I will say, me and my mom have come a very, very long way. She is a great grandparent.
I feel like she got both.
Yeah.
I feel like she got both.
I don't know.
I'd rather have a slut.
Plead the fifth. Plead the fifth. No. She definitely had a time. She definitely had a time with the 3 kids that she's raised for sure. But a little bit might have been a little.
Oh, when I mean both, medicine. I mean you. She got both, and you.
You are such an asshole. Oh,
now I'm not gonna drag your other family. Absolutely not.
No, she had her hands full with all the personalities that us 3 ended up being. Throughout everything that was rough with my mom, she was always my caretaker. Whether it was not the best of care with. However we want to look at it, my dad was always the one that left. And my mom was always the one that stayed. And like even, I think it was middle school, I missed my dad. And my mom decided because I missed my dad that we were going to pack up everything. We were going to move to Texas and they were going to try their relationship out in his hometown. And it didn't work again, So then we come back here and he doesn't follow us, So it's hard because like, I don't mean for any means for me to bash my mom. I think that everything I went through made me who I am, made me tough as I am today. In high school, I actually had already $700 worth of bills because I was tired of getting kicked out. So the rule was, all right, we're not going to kick you out anymore for doing whatever you want to do, but you're going to pay rent, right? So I moved back into my parents' house, and it's like an old garage. They had finally bought a house when they got married. When I was a junior, they had bought a house, And this house had like an enclosed garage, and it was kind of like my two sisters' like playroom. It had like a PlayStation in there, like all their toys, like little kitchenette set and all this stuff. Well, they're like, well, that's the girls' like playroom, but we can have this room. So this room was super small, kind of like a utility closet. It didn't have a window, like it was a literal closet. And I actually painted a window on the wall, and half of it was a moon and stars, and the other half was the sun and clouds. Because my joke was like I never knew what it was till I opened my door, you know. And so another thing I think my parents did to kind of try to redeem themselves is, man, my nickname was Ducky. And they had this Dodge Caliber when the Dodge Calibers came out, and it was this like rubber ducky yellow, and I wanted that car so bad. And every time I drove past it, I was like, oh, I want that car. Well, they ended up getting me the car. Where they're like, here's your car. The note's $300 and something a month. So I was like, of course. They're like, if you don't want to pay that, we'll bring it back. But I mean, I'm like 17. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm keeping this car.
Yeah.
But I was slammed. I was slammed with $300 something of a car note, and then I had the $400 rent to my parents every month. You know, so now I had to work because then I had bills. But then again, at the same time, I felt like I could do whatever I want now, and no one's going to take any of this shit away from me because I'm paying for it. You know, I get into hair school, and they end up going through their divorce. And again, yeah, they would end up going through another divorce.
Number 2, yeah.
This was number 2. So I think I really think they were divorced before I was even 1, or like when I was around 1. And I know they were trying to fight over who was getting the house. I think my mom wanted the house because like obviously we were going to stay with my mom, because my dad was always the one to like leave without us, but my dad was the one that could afford it. So, for whatever reason, I don't know how that exactly happened, but I ended up living in the house by myself until it was repossessed. So I think that also caused like some kind of financial, mental trauma for me. What happened was I ended up graduating high school. My parents were like, look, we're going to pay for your hair school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was already working in a hair salon. And like continuing education like was not like really on the plate, so I was like, I guess I'll go to hair school because I already have a job at a salon. So they're like, we're gonna pay for your student loans, for hair school, and you know whatever. So they're going through their divorce. I'm in the house till it gets repossessed, and then I have this car. The car's in their name, but I'm paying the bill. Well, I go to the bank when I turn 18 for something. And they're like, you're in collections. And I'm like, what's collections? And they're like, well, you have like these student loans that have not been paid on. And like they're in collections and your credit score is like 4 something. So this is all news to me. Like even credit. Yeah. Brand new news to me. Collections, news to me. I'm in it. News to me. You know? Because, like, the student loan has to be in your name, but I'm not even fretting about it because my parents said, like, you know, they're going to put me through.
I got it.
Well, what happened then is I call and I'm like, what the F is going on? Like, I can't get, like, this credit card. Because, like, I think I was going into, like, attempt to build my credit or whatever. I don't even know what I was applying for. And they were like, oh, well, we didn't want you to be mad because, you know, with everything, we couldn't afford the bill. And I'm like, you don't think you should have told me? Like, now? So I spent years. I mean, this probably happened when I was, like, 19-ish, 20-ish. And when me and Missy bought our first house together, we were 24. My father-in-law, Mr. Craig had to pay, I think it was like $1,000 left on something that I had to get my credit where it needed to be to buy this house. So, you know, you think like that was years of me struggle busing, trying to figure out the world, float around paying my own bills, my own rent, all this stuff, and get myself out of collections that like honestly had no idea how this part of the world worked at this time. So the animosity was just building, you know. And I didn't speak to my mom for 6 years. Like my dad and me kept this like friendship relationship. Like me and him would like go out and get drunk together. So he was always kind of like the buddy, but for him to like just leave and out of the picture and not hear from him almost didn't hurt me because I was so used to it.
Yeah.
So I purposely did not talk to my mom for about 6 years because of that. Not because of that, but obviously the build up. We just never really had a really strong relationship the whole time I was growing up. And like I said, she had no resources. I mean, my mom supported her. I also think that because of that, she felt no matter what she did, she would be taken care of because she was like Momo's baby, So I don't really hold any of it against her anymore, though. Like, I think I'm better because of it, and I think she's learned a lot on the way. And I think if she had a chance to do it again in hindsight, I think she'd obviously do it much, much more differently.
Yeah.
So, and here I am now, and I haven't talked to my dad in, 2 years? Like, he doesn't know anything really about my kids. Like, he's deleted us off Facebook and everything. And I'll never know why this last time. And what frustrates me is I have some cousins or family, or you hear other people be like, oh, life's too short, though. Y'all need to get over that. Like, someone needs to call the other. Like, no.
Yeah.
No. Because I've been the bigger person since I was a child. Yeah. Like a literal child. I've always been the biggest person. I've always been the one to forgive and let them come back around and be like, oh, we're back in each other's lives. Whereas, like, now, I'm not saying I'm the child and he's the parent, which he is, but I'm saying I'm the parent to my kids. My priority now as an adult is to make sure my kids are taken care of, to make sure I have a healthy relationship with my kids, to make sure everything in my household, like my wife is happy, our relationship is happy, our business is thriving, we are cared for. And if he's not calling me to check in on like how his kid's first day of kindergarten goes, then like that's his loss. And the last, like, what happened was we kind of had like a little friendly relationship. He, after that divorce, he got remarried. He moved to Texas. I have a younger brother that he has with his new wife. I don't have a relationship with. But I married my youngest sister. And my youngest sister decided to have our stepdad walk her down the aisle. And, I mean, my dad didn't ask what to wear. He didn't ask if there was a rehearsal dinner. So, obviously, I think he kind of already caught the vibe that he wasn't in the wedding. But he acted, I'm guessing he, for the dramatic effect, waited till the day of to, like, have a little hissy fit, And I guess because I married them and I didn't oppose Eric walking Stormy down the aisle, or I didn't oppose that he wasn't the one to do it. But, hey, it's not my day.
Yeah.
That is Stormy's day. That is not my place. And ever since that day, we told him bye. He told my kids bye. That was January 1st. His birthday is middle of January. I text him on his birthday, happy birthday, hope you have a great day. He said thanks. And like that has been it. You know? And I've accepted that I think you have to not meet people where they're at as far as mend their relationship, but meet people at of like where my expectations lie for that relationship.
Yeah.
Me and my mom had a lot of traumatic shit. We didn't talk for 6 years. I reintroduced her into my life because Missy grew up really with one grandparent, and I grew up with one grandparent, and we love our grandparents. So we're like, our kids have a chance to have all their grandparents.
Yeah.
Like more than one person love them that much like a grandparent loves their grandkids. So I didn't want to take that from my kids. Now in the beginning I did have like strict rules. They're not going to sleep over at my mom's. Like I'm going to keep tabs, like, all this stuff. And like it has blossomed into like, like they take them for the weekend now because my mom lives about an hour-ish away. So now she'll come and she'll take them for the weekend. And Shooter is the nickname for Eric, my stepdad. And he's awesome. Like our relationship is really great. So yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing to see how relationships can turn and blossom into, I don't really feel like it's like a mother-son super tight relationship, but I'll take it for what it is and I enjoy it for what it is. Now, as far as my dad, I don't find myself wanting to mend things. One of the last conversations I really had with him, I was like, because we would just kind of like talk, because I just want to learn, right? Like, why did he choose to leave so many times? How was it so easy for him? Like, I just don't understand that mentality. It's like, God, I want to be a part of every second of my kid's life. I miss them when they're at school, things like that, And I remember asking him, like, if something happened to you and your current wife, would you be able to walk out of my little brother's life and like move elsewhere, because that was the thing. He would almost not just want to leave, but he would want to move like away from it all.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think I could. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And at that moment I realized, I'm like, this dude just doesn't have it. Like, he just doesn't have that innate connection with anybody, unless it's like a self-serve. He's really close to one of my sisters, but she grovels at him. I think her way of coping with him leaving when they were so young is like to make him feel like he's the best and he'll love me. And I could be assuming. I could be a total asshole right now and be totally assuming, and that could not be how she feels at all. Yeah. But from my perspective, like, to me, that's kind of just what makes sense, because what happens is when my dad moved away, my mom was actually like, look, you got to go pick up your sisters because, like, I'm just going through it. I don't want to do it. So I picked my sisters up from high school. They were a freshman and junior. Me and Missy had just gotten engaged. We had just bought a house. And now we have 2 not housebroken teenagers living with us, Yeah. And that's another part of our story. Like, me and Missy, we were engaged, had a house, and then we had like this kind of Brady Bunch family we were trying to glue all together.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up calling off that wedding, and through that breakup is when I was like, I know I'm trans and I have to go through this for myself.
Yeah.
Before we ended up back together. But I also think that the breakup was the best thing that could have ever happened to me and Missy.
Yeah.
Missy, I was a hopeless romantic, and Missy was always just kind of like easygoing. Like, there's probably always someone next, which is funny because thinking of our lives, you would think that it would be the opposite.
Yeah.
But I think when we separated, Missy was like, I want you and only you. And I was like, this is not who I am. I need to go through this transition for my mental health. Yeah. And ever since my transition, I've been off of my antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications that have had no thoughts of wanting for self-harm. And, confidence turns into.
Yeah.
It ripples into every aspect, of your life.
I think I'm going to give it like 2 more beats, but I think that when we talk about like how we got to here as adults, I remember really I remember meeting somebody who was trans. I didn't know that they were trans at the time. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand what it I didn't understand what it was. I knew that was a thing, but didn't have anybody be like, hey, this is what it is. Yeah. So I didn't have somebody tell me that language until later. And then there's like a handful of us, like 5 or 6 of us. And I remember, I remember this. I didn't know what trans was until I had met somebody else who was like, that person's trans.
Yeah, and I remember...
what does that mean?
Yeah, man, because I remember being like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable in this body, all this stuff. And like I said, people would ask me if I want to be a dude. I'm like, why even think about that? Because I can't. And then I watched the L Word, and Max was on there. And you still see it, and you're like, huh. But it still didn't feel real because it's on TV. And then I met a person through the Drag Kings, and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. This is possible. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, man, watching them go through theirs, starting the facial hair, I was like, I can have a 5 o'clock shadow. And that was another thing. Missy tells everybody we were in home ec class, and we had like the circular tables in home ec, and we were all going through what we wanted with our life. And everybody's like, I want to go to like this college, or like Missy was like, I want to play ball in college. And I was like, I want to have a 5 o'clock shadow, and I want to wash my car with no shirt on. Yeah. And she was like, at that moment, I realized you were different than anyone I had ever met. Yeah.
I remember
to see someone go through their transition for the first time, man, that was mind-blowing for me. I was
remember
like,
that.
This is possible.
I remember going to drag shows and learning what a drag king was. And I remember...
Here's what I did drag for about 10 years, and you helped with the door. Yeah. How long did you help with you did the door work for like a year or two, huh?
I think like 2 years or so. And I remember learning what a binder was. This was like pre...
Yeah. And that's kind of how I figured out how I felt too, was like performing and having to wear binders and stuff. When I was that male persona on stage, and people would treat me as a male persona, and then I would look in the mirror and see like a flatter chest, man, that amount of confidence had never trickled
Yeah.
into my body. And I had already become addicted to working out, right? Like, because I was after like a certain physique. I just wanted it, man. I was after being muscular and vascular. Still not vascular. Because not in my genetics. But, I was after it. And then when I started doing drag, I realized, like, this is what I'm chasing.
Yeah.
I'm chasing this comfort, how people perceive me.
Yeah. I remember wearing a binder and then being like, this feels good.
Yeah.
And then 3 hours later, I was like, this binder specifically feels terrible. Because that was...
Well, they used to just have the ones that like felt like plastic.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that would cut into you. So before, when I really started... So let's see, I graduated high school in 2007, and then I think I started doing drag in 2009. Bro, there wasn't even binders that I knew of yet. So I was literally using duct tape.
Yeah.
And would duct tape my shit down. And
Not advised. Don't do that.
Don't do that. But you would double side over your nip. That way it wouldn't like rip your shit off when you were taking it off. But man, tape I ended up having was black Gorilla Tape. Bruh. Oh my God. I had some major skin issues going on. I had to be like in a shower to get it to melt off. Like it was
definitely
like,
don't
intense.
use like tape.
But you know what?
Or Gorilla Tape.
That's literally kind of was my gateway drug into realizing,
right,
my anxiety and depression and why I was never, ever comfortable. I mean, I would spend so much money at Express on an outfit to go out with everybody for the weekend. I would literally be like, I'm not going because I know people are going to walk in and see me and be like, oh, a lesbian. Like, I don't want to be seen like that.
Right.
I
remember in that, right, so we'd found out drag, we'd found out binders, we'd found out like using eyeshadow or mascara. People use different tricks to like draw a beard on your face.
Yeah,
right?
I used to do my little 5 o'clock shadow before. Look at me now.
I feel like and then people would misgender or like it was misgendering sort of because they'd be like, hello, sir, and it felt good.
Yes.
When people would say, sir.
It's so funny. Me and Amy, we always say, we're like, man, because we used to hang out all the time. We go to the mall and open the door for somebody and be like, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, I must be looking good today.
Yeah. And then, like, so you knew you were looking good if somebody
misgendered you.
To them.
Yeah.
To them, it was a sir. And to us, it was like, oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
But wow, that felt great. And then as the internet and like the L word and like I think queer as folk, as these other things became more of a cultural phenomenon and like pop culture thing, people knew that it's like, oh, that's not a dude, that's a lady.
Yeah.
And that's a masculine lady, and she wants she, and I'm gonna use she, which is great. So then it became this kind of other area where it was like they'd be like, thank you, sir. I mean, ma'am.
That awkward. I'm sorry. And everybody's sweating. Look, I tell people when I do my advocacy all the time, I'm like, the way to apologize is just fast.
Yeah.
Just get it over with. You don't have to explain. Like, you're sweating, I'm embarrassed, you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed for you. I'm not embarrassed for me because I must be looking good today. But,
Yeah, and it was like, and that was also like way before there was like advocacy talks and like what a pronoun was, or at least that was way before it was like accessible here.
Yeah.
And so I think as people started learning what a dyke was, which is like, some people use that term, some people don't. And as people started learning, what masculine lesbians were, they started using she more. And I started to pass less and like passing, right? Like people know if you look like a man and like you're trying to dress like a man, then like some folks might think you're a man, right? So that's what a lot of times when people say passing, that's what they mean, is like you're looking like the gender identity that
you feel,
which is complicated. That's a quick, dirty version of it. But as people started learning what pronouns were, I started like getting served less, and I was like, this does not feel good. And that's really when I was like, okay, well maybe this trans thing is like it's like a thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's a thing that can happen. And that was like, man, 2012, 2013-ish, I think, is when it really, there were a lot of folks kind of talking about it. There were people in the area in South Louisiana trying to figure out, like, what does that look like? You know, how does that work? You know, more people were talking about it. I remember, too, like, in high school, there was that one, this is such a throwback, there was that one Oprah episode with a trans man. They did not call them that. It was about the man that could get pregnant or whatever terrible wording they used. Man. Yeah, and like no one, right? And we were talking about language earlier and stuff.
And there was no talk that he was trans.
Yeah.
We were just like, how did this dude get pregnant?
Yeah, and people was like, he just did. And like I can't believe I didn't, but the internet wasn't what it is now, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't. I didn't have a computer in my pocket. These kids didn't have a computer in their pocket. So it was there. It was just very well hidden. Mm-hmm. I think from our family for reasons we've just got established.
Yeah.
And I think there was also, because the way that it works and the way that a lot of the older trans care is there was this idea that not even this idea, but it was said in a lot of medical systems is, to be trans, you had to go to therapy to make sure you were like all right and whatever. Yeah. And then you had to go to a certain amount of therapies to get to hormone care if you could find a doctor.
You got to get your T letter, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember I couldn't find anybody who wanted to have insurance, and then anybody I could find wasn't taking new patients, and then anybody that was taking new patients wasn't seeing people for gender dysphoria.
Yeah. So it was like this.
It was such a nightmare.
This long process that there's a lot of,
just to find someone to talk to.
There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of barriers that I know a lot of trans people know the barriers, but you know, for those folks who don't, there are a lot of barriers. There were especially a lot of barriers when me and Dylan were trying to transition, you know, because when did you start? 2014?
2014. Yeah, 2014.
So I started a few months after you. You started in September. Mm-hmm. I started in January.
Yeah. I'm hitting my 8 years next month.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. I'm
right behind.
No, I started in December. I don't know why I can't remember that. I started December 10th.
Yeah, because remember, at first you were like, I don't think I want hormones. And then I started my hormones, and you're like, how do you feel?
Yeah. I remember talking with you a lot about it. And I remember somebody asked me, they're like, do you want hormones? I was like, I don't know. Like, I think probably not, because I pass very well.
Anyway, right.
Yes. Because, like, I always had a deeper voice. And people, even when I would work the drive-thru, people thought I was a dude. They'd come around, they're like, oh. Whoops.
Yeah.
You know, so when I started passing less is when I was really like, I want something to change. I always knew I wanted top surgery.
That was my thing. I was like, I knew I want top surgery, and I like could not wait for a 5 o'clock shadow. Yeah. That was, that was it.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful I don't have bottom dysphoria.
Yeah.
You know, and that's another topic for later. But, you know, I've had top surgery and hysterectomy, so as far as I can see, I've had, say, the medical transition that I aspire to have for myself.
Yeah, I started in December, and then I remember I was one of those rare people that my voice dropped within it started dropping within 2 weeks. Like, people were like, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just." You know,
I got a cold.
They're like, I can't believe it. I didn't even recognize you when you called me, or like when you called through the house, and I was like, yeah, you know, and I was just, it's one of those things where I was just lucky genetically.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, throughout a lot of my life, I've also had various privilege, but like my transition, a lot of it was like genetically. Like, I have a really thick beard. That there are sisters who will tell me, they're like, I can't believe your beard is better than mine. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you besides
it's
your
genetics. It's genetics. Genetics are so real, no matter what anybody on the internet wants to tell you.
But I got my letter, and I had insurance, and I found a doctor that was in New Orleans. You got your letter.
Yeah, I got my letter, and then
totally
could not find. I did not know about our Crescent Care here, you know. So I actually had to drive over the state line to Jackson to, I think it's like Open Arms Clinic or something like that. and they misgendered me the whole time, but they gave me the prescription for testosterone, and then I also had to get my first prescription filled in Mississippi, and then once I got it filled in Mississippi, then I was allowed to come across state lines home to Louisiana to get it filled. Now, I had to go through 3 different Walgreens and CVS's to get it filled here, and the pharmacist would be like, we can't fill that. I'm like, why we can't fill it? And they're like, we don't fill it.
Yeah.
And like, I know cisgender men get prescribed testosterone for testosterone, deficiencies, imbalances, and all that. So it kind of was blowing my mind that it took me 3 major pharmacies. Like, it wasn't like I was at your conservative mom and pop pharmacy around the corner here. I was going to CVS and Walgreens, and I still have not moved my prescription from the original place that will fill it, because like, I know it's a different world now, but I'm like, I know they fill it. I'm safe there. I ain't gotta mess with anybody, answer anybody's questions. I'm in the system, and it's automatic for me at this point.
Yeah, it's like, I think when people ask me, or other people are like, what's it like, or are you happy, and and it's like, yeah, I am, but like, there are small little things that I do because I also am the way I am.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not the only person that does this. I'm also like not the only trans person that does this, because the way the system is set up it isn't set up in this, like, it's set up in a binary way. And there are people working to change it, and it's happening slowly, but just as much slow progress as slow. When the slow progress happens, you have entire states working to undo that.
Yeah.
So I think, like, if there's anything y'all take home today, or if there's anything y'all are like, whoa, man, I really resonated with your story. Like, how can I be an ally, or how can I support those trans people's in my lives, is like, well, listen to their pronouns and like, just listen to them, but like, also like, be aware of what's happening in other places, because like in Texas,
allow them to know themselves better than you think you know them. Like, just respect that they know how they're feeling, or at least give them the space to experiment with how they're feeling without the judgment or treating them like better. I think that's important.
I think that's also super relevant too, because I know Demi Lovato, right? She just They had said they were using they,
and now
I think she says she her,
which is like how it happens for some people. Some people just need to experience it and say, does this shoe fit for me? Does this feel right? And maybe it feels right for right now. And I know non-binary people who are she, her, and they, them, like, consistently, and that's also fine. But also another topic for I'm sure another talk we will do.
It's just like, I think, give people grace and give people time to grow
and respect
and like, ask them what they want and ask them what they need. Like, we don't expect you to be a mind reader, but we do expect you to like treat us with kindness and compassion and respect, and like,
give us our space to be us.
Because
we're not hurting anybody. Well, I think that was a great tidbit look into our completely different lives that have ended us here at this podcast table together to share our stories with the world and talk about anything we feel like is beneficial for others.
Hey friends, we know that your life is busy and filled with all types of commitment, tasks, and obligations, so we thank you for you spending your time with us. We hope you are now feeling good about who you authentically are and how you should invest in yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of others. That being said, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Subscribe, and we'll talk at you next time.